Welcome everyone to the author series of 2021, presented to you by the Women's Association of Hilton Head Island. We will start promptly our webinar at 5 o'clock with Susan Meissner, our best-selling author of The Nature of Fragile Things, which I just finished about 2 hours ago. It's absolutely an awesome book. Can't wait to hear more about her character development and her research, because it takes place during the earthquake in San Francisco in 1906. But her characters are just very, let me just say this, fragile, but very interesting. So there's a lot of mystery in the book as well. We met Susan back in November, if you all remember, with our discussion with her about her book, The Last Year of the War, which took place in World War II. So we're excited to get to know her more and learn about her style and her background with Janet Porter, once again, who is my co-host. Janet, you want to join us? Janet and I are our partners in the author series. I'm not going to say in crime, but in our author series. We've been doing this for well over 9 months. Hey, Janet, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm just fine. It's good to see you again, Robin.
It's good to see you. I think I told you I'm hibernating in my daughter's house because our living room is being painted. So our daughter lives here in Hilton Head, and it's actually nice to be able to go someplace and not just hang out in our bedroom. But so my backdrop is just basically her guest room closet doors.
But aren't we lucky compared to what people are going through in the rest of the country?
Oh my God.
I mean, I'm sure many of the people on the call today have family and friends around the country who are, without propane, don't have a generator, yes. We talked to somebody who's even in a community center. I mean, it was 38 below or something like that. Temperature in Minnesota. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yes. Can you imagine?
Yes.
I think it's going to be really amazing when they calculate the death toll on this weather forecast, because we've never had weather like this. It's just horrible. And of course, another storm's coming across the country.
I know, Janet. What disturbed me, I heard on one of the news reports that people were so desperate for heat that they actually went into their cars to turn the heater on in their cars, which of course is, if you're in your garage, that's just a death knell. But
deadly, yeah.
That there were people that were, yes. So that's desperation. So yes, we'll pray for them and pray for good weather. And for us, I think we might have a little storm tonight, but we've got March coming.
Yes. March is beautiful here. I love it when everything starts to bloom, and
I do too.
We all start planting. I mean, it's so great.
We had a beautiful spring last year. It was kind of nice and cool, and so looking forward to that. So again, we will start our webinar promptly at 5 o'clock with our best-selling author, Susan Meissner, with her latest book, The Nature of Fragile Things. Janet Porter will be interviewing her once again. But before we do meet Susan, we want to meet you, and we want to hear from you, and we want to just get involved and have you participate with a couple of polling questions, which has kind of become a WAHHI tradition now during these Zoom days. So we are going to throw out our first course. Everybody's talking about vaccine. Have you had the vaccine? Have you had the first shot? When are you going to get it? I was blessed. I volunteer at VIM, Volunteers in Medicine. So I was able to get my shot, both of my shots actually at Hilton Head Hospital early. So I feel very, very blessed with that. And Janet, I think you're coming up, right?
Well, Robin, we've talked, both of our husbands are scheduled for first vaccines next week.
Right.
And then my appointment, because I'm not 70, I don't want to brag about that to the audience, but I'm not 70. So my first appointment is the end of March, but I have people that I scheduled in the 65 to 69-year-old age group who can't get their appointments till the end of May.
I know.
So it's everybody's trying hard, but we're fortunate. I think we're doing well on the island compared to other communities. Yes.
So let's go with our first question, Janet, which is, what is your status relative to the vaccine? So have you decided you're just too either afraid or concerned about the side effects and ramifications, so you're not going to get vaccinated? You have an appointment for your first vaccine, but you haven't had it yet, or have had the first and have had the second. So just hover over and select your choice on the poll. and we will get the results in just a few seconds. Again, I've been blessed. I've had my second vaccine. Actually, I didn't feel so great after my second shot. I had it a week ago Friday, and I was okay Friday, but then on Saturday, I felt a little weak and a little achy. Didn't get a fever, but just didn't feel, and a little nauseated, but all good now. So Janet, what are our ladies telling us?
Well, 100% of the people who've responded to the poll have had their first vaccine.
Oh, wow.
So they're probably
Good.
scheduled for one within another couple weeks. So they'll be, what they say is that you need to wait 2 weeks after your second vaccine, and then your antibiotics have peaked, and then
Right.
you're really most resistant. So good for those people. I'm assuming they're all over 70, and that's why they were able to get their appointments scheduled. So, we have this thing called vaccine envy now, where people are jealous of other people. But I do want to say the Computer Club on Hilton Head Island, if you're not aware, the Greater Island Council, I just had a meeting with them at 4 o'clock, actually. We're working to try to outreach to people throughout the Hilton Head area to make sure that they can get scheduled. Because one of the problems is not just getting the vaccine, it's getting something scheduled. And we have a lot of people who still haven't been able to navigate that. So please contact the Computer Club of Hilton Head, or you can contact me if you know of people who are having trouble getting scheduled because they don't have a email address or anything. We can get them through all that, because the point is to get everybody scheduled we can before they open up to the public.
Right. And so we did have, so now people 65 and older in South Carolina can get vaccinated. Of course, it started with 70 over, but now that's reverted to 65 and over. So again, it's still and I use the Hilton Head Hospital website, went on, then you go to the VAMS website, and it's relatively simple, but it's also can be a little bit confusing. So we did want to ask you as our next polling question, ladies, how hard would you say it is to get a vaccine scheduled? So as you know, some people have now gone to drugstores, they've gone out of state, they've gone to other places, but let's see what your choices are about getting that vaccination scheduled. Has it been very easy, hard, very hard, or absolutely impossible? So in my neighborhood in Indigo Run, I have friends that went to Savannah. I've had some go to Beaufort Memorial. I've had others actually go up to North Carolina. So, but the Hilton Head Hospital here, I think, has done an outstanding job. Signage, the staff inside, it's been a very good flow of it. I mean, this is a huge undertaking for this country to be able to vaccinate. We hope everyone by late summer. So, ladies.
And Robin, it varies state by state. I talked to somebody in Minnesota yesterday, and they're still only scheduling people 75 and up in Minnesota.
Wow.
So, as you talk to people around the country, as they make their healthcare workers a priority, it varies. So let me tell you the results of the poll. 43% of the people said it was hard. Another 43% said it was easy, and 14% said it was very easy. So fortunately, nobody who's on the call today said it was impossible, because those are the people we really want to reach.
Right.
But there are resources out there. Please seek them for you or your neighbors so that we can make sure people get scheduled, because that's the trick. And then all they have to do is show up for the appointment, and we want to get shots in arms.
Right. And when you do show up, wherever it might be, you need your driver's license. That's what you need. You need that ID, or I guess even a passport that has a picture of you and an ID, and that's really all you need. And then they, at least at Hilton Head Hospital, they went ahead on site and scheduled me for the next shot.
Right.
So it was very, very simple. All right. Again, this is our author series for 2021. We have Susan Meissner will be joining us in just a few moments at 5 o'clock. Janet Porter is our interviewer, as always. We do have one more question in our polling. Again, we'll start at 5, but we want to hear from you. We want you to be involved and participate, and we want that dialogue, ladies, as we prepare for the 5 o'clock author series. So this is the biggie. How have you fared during the COVID period? How have you been doing? How have you been living? Because it has been basically, Janet, a year. It has been 1 year. Today is February the 18th. And so this is when we began to first start hearing about COVID over was it Seattle? I guess it was. I don't remember now.
Things really shut down the week of March 9th.
Right.
So we're just
right.
shy of a year. But they're
Yeah.
saying that they think 550,000 people will have died by the end of March, which means by the middle of March, which means basically in a year. Who would have imagined? Who would have ever imagined?
I remember Dr. Fauci saying early on, oh, we'll have, 200,000 people pass. And here we are at this mark. I mean, it's terrible. So how have you all been doing? Has it been easy or relatively easy or difficult? So ladies, as we prepare for our author series kickoff at 5 o'clock, if you would just let us know how you've been faring over this last year. Thank goodness for WAHHI, because WAHHI has allowed us to stay connected and be involved in so many different things. And we just are so grateful for our leadership and our president, Tamara Averett, and all of our speakers and all of our events that have been basically via Zoom. So how are people doing, Janet? How's the polling?
So 73% said it's been relatively easy, and the remaining 27% said it's been difficult. So
Okay.
I don't know about you, Robin, but I would answer that question different based on what day of the week it is. I mean, I have times when I think it's been relatively easy, and other days when I think it's difficult,
Yes.
And I think many of our viewers would say the same thing. But fortunately, no one said it was very difficult, and no
Yes.
one said it was easy.
Right.
So what we wish is that everybody stays connected with WAHHI, and that WAHHI continues to provide services to everyone, so that you can, so that we can continue to get through this as we continue to get people scheduled, get people vaccinated, and try to have people return to some degree of normalcy. So Robin, I'll sign off now, and we'll get ready, because I'm looking forward to talking to Susan Meissner about this book, because I read it and couldn't put it down.
Yes.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that as well. And just, we want to remind everyone, there is that chat function that you can use. If you have a laptop, it's at the bottom of your screen, or if you have an iPad, it's at the top, and you can ask questions or make comments. But it is almost 5 o'clock, and it is time to introduce our second edition of the 2021 author series for the Women's Association of Hilton Head Island. I'm Robin Zimmerman, and I have been honored and privileged over the last 9 months or so to be your moderator. Your host, Janet Porter, has always been our interviewer, but I'm really excited about today's presentation, if you will, or today's interview in particular, because I just finished the book. It is fantastic. It's The Nature of Fragile Things by Susan Meissner. It's her most recent book. You all remember we talked with her in November of 2020 about her book, The Last Year of the War. It is, she writes historical fiction, and that was during World War II. This particular book is set during the earthquake, the great earthquake of 1906 in San Francisco. And but it's a very intricate story, very fragile story about relationships and husbands and wives and babies and children. It's fascinating. So again, we welcome all of you to our 2021 author series presented by the Women's Association of Hilton Head Island with our best-selling author, Susan Meissner. We do want to remind you that you all can see us, but we can't see you. We do that because we have so many people that are joining us, and it gets a little bit convoluted. So this is a webinar instead of a meeting. We did want to remind you about the chat function. If you have questions, comments, if you have some technical issues that you want to share with Nancy Fish, who is our techno geek. I don't want to call her a geek. She's not much more than that. She's an amazing woman, the executive director of the Sandbox. But thank you so much, Nancy Fish, for being there to look at our chat and to make any changes or additions. But with that, again, want to welcome everyone. And Janet has joined us. Hey, Janet, how are you on this kind of cloudy Thursday evening?
Foggy.
Foggy.
Yeah, it's not foggy. It's not foggy as you get into Bluffton, but boy, I just came back, but it is foggy here on the island.
It is foggy. Well, good to see you, Janet. And I'm excited to have you talk with Susan. I'm going to hold the book up one more time. I just finished it this afternoon, And you said that you read it last week, actually, and then you brought me the book, and we both just loved it. So with that, I'm going to sign off and turn it over to you, Janet, for our interview with Susan Meissner.
Well, Robin, I'm also going to tell you that I went last week to get the book at Barnes and Noble, and it was sold out. We didn't tell Susan that yet. It was already sold out. So it's got a lot of buzz. So good to see you, Robin. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Okay.
So for those of you who haven't joined us before, I'm going to give you a brief introduction for Susan Meissner, but I just want to say my comment on the book is do not start it unless you've got a lot of time, because I started it at 10 o'clock last week and I didn't go to sleep till I had it read. So I slept and I was reading until the middle of the night because I kind of couldn't put it down because Susan's such a great storyteller. So let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a USA Today best-selling author of historical fiction, which WAHHI has said is the #1 genre they love, historical fiction. And she has 500,000 books in print in over 15 languages. She's an author, speaker, and writing workshop leader with a background in community journalism. Susan was born and raised in San Diego, California, and she ended up attending Point Loma Nazarene University. But she's lived in England, Germany, and Minnesota as an adult. And while she was in Minnesota, Susan actually was the editor of a weekly newspaper. In 2007, she moved with her family back to San Diego, where she lives with her husband and where her 4 grown children live. So her latest book, as Robin said, The Nature of Fragile Things, takes place during the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. So let's see if we can get Susan to join us.
Hey.
Hi, good to see you again.
I'm so happy to be back. Thank you. Thank you for having me a second time. I'm pleased to be here.
And do you love hearing people say they couldn't put your book down?
I apologize for the lost sleep, but yes, that's kind of one of the nicest compliments you can give to a writer is they're unable to put your story down. So apologies for the lost sleep, but thank you.
Yeah, well, and so I was so thrilled to hear that I couldn't get your book at the local Barnes and Nobles because it was already sold out, and I ended up having to get it on Amazon because I needed it so quickly. But I like to frequent Barnes and Noble. They've been a great partner with us. So, I want to remind our guests today, you can ask Susan anything you want. She'll answer any question. I can see your chat. You just go to the bottom of top of your toolbar, you can see chat, and it'll just show up on the right side of your screen. And when you chat in, it goes to all the panelists, and I'll be sure to ask any questions that you raise. So let's talk specifically, Susan, about the nature of fragile things. We've talked the last time we met in November about kind of the books you focus on. And this particular book, it happens to be set in the midst of the San Francisco earthquake, but in a way it could be set anywhere. So without spoiling all the surprises in the book, would you just give us a quick overview of what the book is about?
Sure. Well, I do use the 1906 earthquake as a backdrop, but you're right. I could put the story of the people that are in the story anywhere, but I chose the earthquake because that particular event, it was cataclysmic. It was very defining. It was a defining moment for San Francisco. And it's also a picture of what can happen when it feels like your whole world is crumbling beneath your feet, because that's kind of literally what happened. But we also use that imagery to talk about our own personal lives when it seems like our lives are being turned upside down, like our own little worlds are crumbling. And so I kind of wanted to focus on that kind of imagery. Like, what is it like when it feels like everything you've built around you is falling apart? So the story is about a mail order bride, actually. She's an Irish immigrant living in a terrible tenement in New York, Lower Manhattan. And she wants out for a lot of reasons that she doesn't quite reveal to the reader at the beginning, but it's bad enough where she's living that she wants out. And so she's desperate enough to answer a mail order bride ad from a man in San Francisco who lost his wife, and he's got this little girl, 5 years old. He wants a new wife for himself and a new mother for this child. So she answers the ad and he sends her a train ticket. And when she gets to San Francisco, it's a year before the quake, and no one knows the quake is coming, of course. Nobody has any idea. And at first, everything seems to be okay. Even though she's married, excuse me, a complete stranger, at the beginning, she's pretty happy with this version of happiness that she's cobbled together for herself, because she finally has a nice house to live in, good clothes, good food to eat. She's got this little girl to love, and she knows she can't have children. So she thought she would never be anyone's mother. So everything is nearly perfect, except for one thing. And it's her husband. He's not mean or abusive, but there's something up with him, and she can't quite put her finger on it. But she dismisses it because she has 90% of everything else that she's wanted for a long time. And she's able to dismiss it until the night before the earthquake, when everything starts to crumble. And I mean everything. And then, of course, the very next day, it's all crumbling all around her.
So one of our listeners today has clearly read the book, because Anita Johnson Gwynn says, "Do scoundrels like Martin, who's the husband, really exist?"
Well, I can't tell the rest of the audience too much about him, because part of his persona is revealed to you in the pages. But unfortunately, I did do character studies on people like him, and sadly, they do exist, and they can perpetuate a lot of difficult situations, because they can come across as, just average people, but they are not average people.
So did you write this book before we got COVID?
I did. I wrote it. I think took my last research trip up to San Francisco in April of 2019. And then I think it was right around Christmas of 2019 where we first began to hear of this new strain of a virus that was over in Asia. And it didn't even really have a name yet. And by then I had already finished writing the book. All the research trips were over with. And so I was able to, I feel, complete the book without having to worry about the pandemic putting a squelch on being able to finish. I'm lucky in that respect.
Well, I that's so interesting, because I wondered, when you talk about your whole world crumbling, which is really, what happened in San Francisco during the earthquake, and the extent of the fires and everything was very interesting, that you obviously have done a lot of research on. But I was wondering if you said it during the San Francisco earthquake as kind of an example of the fact that people are resilient, and that people go through horrible things in the United States and have gone through horrible things, but have rebounded. And so I kept wondering if you had written it, kind of as COVID was unfolding. So it's interesting you happened to write it right before, because San Francisco, of course, didn't impact the whole country, but
Right.
It was very traumatic for those in San Francisco.
Right. And it is a picture, I think, if you look at San Francisco now, I don't know how many of you have been able to come out west and visit it, but it's a vibrant, bold, brash city. And you would never guess that 500 city blocks, really all of downtown, was flattened by fire and the earthquake. And to go there now, there's hardly any echoes at all of the earthquake. In fact, they held the World's Fair in San Francisco only 9 years later. So when you think of the massive destruction, and it was pretty massive, to be able to host the World's Fair in only 9 years, it shows tremendous resiliency on the part of San Franciscans.
Yes. So, it's interesting, Susan, because I just also read The Lost and Found Bookstore. Have you read that book?
I have it on my to be read pile, but I haven't read it yet.
Well, part of that takes place in San Francisco.
Oh,
in
great.
the earthquake. So you must have done a lot of research about the earthquake. We'll just talk about that for a few more minutes. And what surprised you about what you learned? For example, I doubt anybody knows that 500 blocks, think about that, 500 blocks were flattened. But what else surprised you from your research?
I think I went into it believing that it was the earthquake that was so devastating. And I found out really quickly that it wasn't the earthquake, it was the fire. So what happened was, a little after 5 a.m. on April 18th, there was this massive earthquake. And, if the Richter scale had been around, it would have measured almost 8, which is a powerful earthquake. And so for a minute, almost a full minute, the earth is shaking in San Francisco. And wood frame buildings, a lot of those came down right away. Buildings that were like substandard or weren't built on like strong foundations, a lot of those fell right away. But like houses of stone and brick, or houses that have been built on firmer foundations. Many of those survived the quake with maybe little or minimal damage. But what happened is, because the quake was so forceful, it broke open all the gas lines that were piped into all the houses and buildings. And it also broke open all the water mains underneath the ground. So the gas lines that broke open, they started all these little fires everywhere. And the fire brigades couldn't put any of the little fires out because all the water mains had busted open. They couldn't access any water. And here, San Francisco on a peninsula, it's surrounded by water on 3 sides, and they can't put out these little fires. Well, the little fires, they merge, they get together. And in a few hours, it's just a wall of flame moving westward across downtown San Francisco, and there was no way of stopping it. So that surprised me, really, is that the earthquake did its damage, but it wasn't the quake itself that leveled downtown San Francisco. It was that inferno of a fire.
Yeah, so it made me think, I wondered, I don't believe, I've read many of your books, Susan, but I don't believe, have you written a book about the Chicago fire?
You know, that was always on my list of things. Maybe like I've got a little list going of topics that interest me, and that's been on there. And I don't know if I'll approach it now because I've just written this one, but it has been on my list.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I thought, your books, the Fall of Marigolds, Last Year of the War, I think it's The Winemaker's Wife. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
so
so
the
many
winemaker, yeah, that one belongs to Kristen Harmel, the
Oh,
winemaker.
Kristen Harmel. Okay,
Yes,
sorry.
yes,
I've been
yes.
reading a lot lately. But
No,
so
she's a
many-
great author. I would love to be compared with her. She's wonderful and a good
Oh,
friend.
good. Oh, good. Well, she's been a terrific guest for us. But so many of your books take place during tragic situations, 9/11,
Mhm.
World War I, World War II. And so that's why I was thinking, when I read about the fires in San Francisco from the earthquake, I thought, I wonder if she's going to do something on the Chicago fire, because it also was equally devastating. And I think it's interesting how that event changed architecture, changed plumbing and sewing line, water main line construction, changed so much of the way we do city planning.
Mhm.
And has forever changed the way we live all across the country. So I think that was interesting. So, you've tended to place your novels during particularly really challenging times. How do you, in keeping with this discussion, how do you pick the time? How does that, you have a story, and then you put it in the time of the 1906 earthquake,
Mhm.
but how do you do that relationship between the story that you have and the time you set it in?
Well, for me lately, I would say for like the last, probably the last 5 books, the event has come to me first. Like I'll find out about an event that maybe hasn't had a lot of light shown on it. And the earthquake was one of those. There haven't been that many novels. There are 2 other ones new this year besides mine, but up until this year, there really hadn't been that many novels written with the San Francisco earthquake as a backdrop. And so lately it's been the event comes to me first. And I'll kind of find the nugget of an idea of like, well, what makes this backdrop interesting to a reader? Like what kind of people, what kind of characters can I put into this very volatile setting that will create a really good story? And so the earthquake came first, and I knew it was a backdrop to show that we build our lives on this earth, and everything we build is really quite fragile. Like, San Francisco fell because it was a fragile thing built on an earthquake fault. They didn't know that they were building on an earthquake fault, but it is. And so it didn't take much for those buildings to topple. And the water mains were fragile in comparison to the quake. And the gas lines were fragile in comparison to the quake. And so the things we construct can all be taken from us in a second. We know this is true. And so I began to think, well, what things can't be taken from us? And, love can't be taken from us. We might lose the person we love, but the love we get to keep for as long as we want to keep it. And I knew that I could tell a story about the power of mother love, because mother love is something that I think is timeless, ageless, and we all understand it. We either are a mother or we had one. So I thought if it's about mother love and friendship And if it's about resiliency and recognizing that some things are fragile, some things aren't. Like women are seen as fragile creatures at the turn of the century, and they really weren't, especially if you think about some of the things that women had to go through in the early part of the 20th century. So not everything that looks fragile is. And so as I thought about all those things, I thought I could probably craft a story thinking about all those things and use that earthquake as a backdrop because metaphorically it fits.
So Susan, I wanted to tell you, Sue Sidow has written and said that she wants me to tell you that she really enjoyed the nature of fragile things. And like Janet, it says, I couldn't put it down. And she wants me to tell you that she also enjoyed Secrets of a Charmed Life.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you
which
very
I know
much.
is one of your bestsellers, isn't it?
Yeah, people like that one, and I'm glad. It was a fun book to write, and one that I still enjoy talking about with book clubs if they want to talk about it. Even though I wrote it, I think I wrote it in 2016, but it's still a book I like talking about.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you were saying about the title, because I think titles are always interesting. Did you pick the title, or did they do that with the publicist?
I always turn in a book with a title, we call it a working title, because it's not set in stone until everybody at the publishing house agrees. It's a title that will sell the book. And so I came up with The Nature of Fragile Things. I really liked it. I felt like it said a lot. It had many different meanings. Some of them I just told you. And so I hoped that the marketing and sales department would like it too, because they kind of get the final say. And I do trust the sales and marketing team because they're out there, selling the book. And so they know what kind of title will sell a book. And, sometimes I'll come up with a title, but they'll go, no, I don't think so. And we'll have to change it. But this one they liked. Everybody liked this one. So we were able to keep it from the get-go.
Well, Susan, it's interesting that you said, because I always, am interested when I go to a book group discussion, people usually speculate about the title and what it was supposed to mean. And I was thinking that The Nature of Fragile Things, because relationships are so dominant in this book, I thought it was also about the nature of fragile relationships. So it's interesting that you talked about infrastructure. Did you see the title as both a reflection of infrastructure, kind of hard resources, but also things like relationships? Did you think that was supposed to be all encompassing?
Well, I think with a title like The Nature of Fragile Things, it's not specific, so that readers can kind of bring meaning to it as they read and kind of personalize the book for themselves. They say that there is the book the author wrote, and there is the book the reader reads, and they're the same physical thing, but the book I wrote sometimes feels differently to the reader who reads it. And so that's interesting that you would bring that into the conversation about fragility, about these relationships, because I hadn't really thought about it before, but it does make sense. I guess one of my main controlling thoughts was that the nature of something fragile is if you drop it, it will break. That's the nature of something fragile. But this idea that not everything that looks fragile is, and the idea that sometimes you don't know how strong you are until you're put to the test. And a lot of times we find resolve within when we go through the difficult times, and we didn't know it was there. Or maybe it was there, but it hadn't been polished and it hadn't been worked like a muscle. And we become stronger the more we continue on a hard path. And I think all of those things came into play for me. And then it's nice to hear that you picked up on another tenet of this idea of fragility, that some relationships too are fragile.
Susan, I don't know if you know this, but our presidents start in June. So Tamara Everett, who's going to be speaking later, his term ends in June, and a woman named Betty Hamilton comes in as president. And presidents come in with themes, and Betty's theme is resilience. So the fragility means, you need resilience. And so many of your books have a resilience theme. And where does that come from in you and in your background, that's what you wanted to focus on is resilience?
Mm-hmm. For me, when I read a book, fiction, that it's going to take me to another time and place, and hopefully I'm going to enjoy the ride and feel like I'm living in the footsteps of the characters. I do want to feel at the end of it that that was worth my time. You know, if you read a book where the ending is unsatisfying or sad or depressing, it's almost like, okay, well that was good literature, but I don't feel very good. You know, like I'm not happy. I don't feel validated as a human, or I don't feel like I learned anything new about myself in the reading of that book. And so I like to read books where, you know, even if the character has to go through a really tough time and maybe they come out on the other side of it with something different than what they started out with, maybe not exactly what they wanted, but something else. As long as I feel like I'm satisfied with the way that character kind of finishes out on that last page, then I feel like I learned something about history, or I learned something about me. And resiliency, I think, is something that if you see a character go through something tough, and then they make it through somehow, and on the last page they are a stronger version of who they were before, makes me feel good when I put the book down, and it makes me feel like, oh, that's a book I might read again, because I feel, you know, empowered to live my own life, because life is hard. We all know how hard life can be. And so to read a novel where a character goes through a hard time and then comes out on the other side stronger, well, that makes me feel like, well, if that can happen to this fictional person, I can imagine it happening to me. I think it's an empowering thing to have a book about women who find resiliency, and then mirror it for us, because there are times when we need it.
Many of our listeners today are in book groups, some in WAHHI book groups and some in other book groups. I'm in a WAHHI book group and a non-WAHHI book group. But one of the best nonfiction books on this topic that's been written in years is Grit by Angela Duckworth. And I would commend, Nancy will put this in the chat for you. It's called Grit, Grit, by Angela Duckworth. By Angela Duckworth. And she is a noted researcher on what is it, kind of grit is sort of stick-to-itiveness.
Yes.
You just, you know, you recognize it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And she's the leading national researcher on what is it that distinguishes people who survive, who don't. And just real quickly, she starts her book by talking about how West Point couldn't figure out, after this very, very intense screening process to get down to the 1,400 or whatever candidates, how like a couple hundred don't make it through Beast Week, through the 6-week Beast Week. And they couldn't figure out whether they were what they were doing in their selection process. They were picking people who couldn't make it through Beast Week. And she has a grit scale that's a 10-question survey. And it turns out that her grit scale was more predictive of who would make it through Beast Week, the kind of grilling orientation to West Point, than any other indicator, than IQ, than whether you'd been on a sports team, than whether you'd been a captain. So grit, that ability to hang in there, hopefully we'll see that at the Olympics. If the Olympics take place this year, think about what those athletes have gone through to stick with it against all odds, and be so disappointed that the games didn't happen in 2020, but they hung in there,
Yes. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Resilience is sort of everything. So I want to go back to one of the things that you're really noted for, Susan, is character development. And Robin and I had a chance to talk, because we both read the book, about how you have such incredible ability to develop characters that the reader cares about and wants to know what happens to. So and other authors don't have that skill. So what do you think it is that's your secret that makes us fall in love and be rooting for your characters early on?
Gosh, thank you. That's a wonderful compliment. That means a lot to me, truly. I think it's a combination of having been at this a while. I feel like you get better at creating memorable characters the longer you're at this gig. So part of it is just experience with crafting characters. I hope I'm getting better with it every time. And the other thing I've learned is, in order for a character to feel real to you, to be someone you can root for, or to feel like you care about them, they have to want something that you get. So they have to want something that universally a reader from any country will understand. So like if a character wants or needs their father's approval. Everybody who reading can probably understand what it means not to have it, or they can imagine what it would be like not to have it and to want it very much. And then that we also need to, when we are crafting characters, is not only do they need to want something that they don't have, but there's got to be a reason why they want it. Like, why is it so important for this character to have her father's approval? Like, why? And those two things, if you can narrow it down to like the very essence of what this character wants and why they want it, that is very helpful to then crafting a story that sets them on a quest to get that thing that they want. You know, like with Dorothy, Wizard of Oz, you know, she wants a world, she wants to live in a world where everything is perfect. You know, she sings about it before the tornado, somewhere over the rainbow. You know, that's where I want to be. I want to live in a world where everything is perfect. Well, we get that. We understand what she wants and why she wants it. We can understand that too, because, you know, why? Well, she's an orphan. She should have parents and she doesn't. We don't know why in the movie she doesn't, but it's obvious that she doesn't have her parents. She doesn't have siblings. She's living with an older aunt and uncle. She's got this woman who wants her dog. There's a lot of reasons why we can see why she would want a perfect world. So if I can create a character for you that wants something that you get, that you understand, and for reasons that you get and understand, that's half the battle. And then the other thing I've been doing lately is I will, and I used to do this with the Myers-Briggs test, but now I use the Enneagram, is I will take the test as if I am the character. And usually if you take the test, if it's not you, if you're pretending to be somebody else, you should get different answers than when you take the test for yourself. But the Enneagram personality test is very revelatory because it will produce a result for me that says your character then is like this. This is how this type of person reacts when they're afraid. This is how this type of person reacts when they're happy, mad. This is how this type of person expresses love. And so it's the Enneagram wheel. And if you haven't ever studied Enneagram, it's pretty fascinating. Even if you don't believe in it, it's very fascinating study. I just found a lot of help there because I'm an Enneagram 2. And Enneagram 2, people like me, we're very empathetic. We hate letting people down. It's one of our weaknesses that we're people pleasers. There's a whole list of things that 2s are like. Well, if I have a character who's an Enneagram 4, they're not going to be like me. They're going to want other things and desire other things and be afraid of other things. And if I have a long list of character traits, then I know how to have my character react in a situation that's going to ring true because other people are just like that.
So Susan, spell Enneagram for Nancy Fish.
Sure. It's ENNEAGRAM, ENNEAGRAM. It's been around for centuries, I guess. It's kind of popular now, but it's been around a long time. And there's different tests you can take. There's a couple of free ones though out there that I just use the free version. And it's just very interesting because you can take the test, find out what number you are, and then read the results, like, you know, what is a 2 like, or a 3 or a 4? There are 9 of them. And it's just a window. It's a window onto understanding personality types. It also helps you understand your children better and your spouse, because most likely you didn't marry your exact same number. You were probably attracted to somebody else. But then if you figure out what your spouse is, then you understand them better because it's a personality profile that's quite accurate and is universal. It pops up all over the place.
So Susan, it's interesting. I do a lot of leadership development and use Myers-Briggs and several other instruments. I haven't been a fan of Enneagram, but now you're going to make me a fan. And somebody said to me, well, why do you do that? And I said, well, because, you know, leadership development is really about learning more about yourself. And of course, when you get to be our age, you think, gosh, everyone should do this with their prospective spouse so they could not be fighting over, you know, the toilet seat or whatever. But you know, I was explaining to somebody how I use those instruments to grow people. And she said, so this is sort of like therapy. And I've never thought of leadership development as like therapy, but it is therapeutic to take those profiles and to learn about yourself and then learn about how people approach problem solving or decision making or whatever differently, so you can work better with them. And so it is sort of like therapy too. So you're the first author I have ever talked to who said they've used Myers-Briggs or an Enneagram or any of the other personality profiles you can do to be in your character development. Maybe that's why your character development is so good. Have
Oh, thank
other authors told you that they do that?
Yes, I have other friends who use that same type of way of building character. It's not the way, it's just a way. And what I like about it is it helps me have consistency, and it helps my character stay true to the character profile I gave them in the beginning. Otherwise, I could easily have them morph into me because I'm writing the book, and I don't want them to make all the same choices and decisions I would make, because that's not true to the character I'm trying to form in them. So taking the test, whether it's Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, just gives me a list of traits that I can turn to. Like if I'm writing a scene and the character has to make a decision, I know what I would do as an INFJ, and I know what I would do as an Enneagram 2, but I need to know what that character would do. And if I'm not sure, I could kind of look to that list of typical traits of those kinds of people and craft a decision that would seem consistent and ring true and make them seem real.
Actually, Susan, I'm going to use that in the leadership development I do with people. That's one of the characteristics of great authors who use those, is that they use those to draft characters and imagine how they would really react in situations. I think that's brilliant. I'm so glad you shared that. So are there, Susan, you and I communicated by email a week or two ago, and you were, I think, up writing all night. Were you? You're in the
There
midst
are
of
nights I just can't sleep. I don't know why. There are nights, and I think I've read this from other people. It's either pandemic related or just my age. But there are just nights where I wake up at 1:30 and I lay there going, I'm bored. I'm just going to get up and start doing things. And so I'm quiet. But yeah, I probably was writing because I just was like, I wasn't sleeping.
So you're in the midst of a book right now.
I am.
Can you tell us anything about it?
Sure. It's the first, I'm writing the first rough draft, so it's very rough right now, but I can tell you in general terms what it's about. I don't really have a title yet for it. I'm thinking of some, but nothing that I've landed on yet. But what it's about is 3 generations of women impacted by the eugenics movement of the early 20th century. And the eugenics movement is thankfully in the rear view. It was a terrible idea. I'm glad it's gone. But I think it's a time in our history it reveals a lot about us. And I think things that happen in history that should be remembered and need to be remembered. And the eugenics movement, if you're not familiar with it, it was this idea that began as an idea to help society be a better society, and let's have a society where healthy children are produced and smart children are produced, because they will make for a better society. It's a win-win-win. Society wins, mom and dad win, the children win because we're producing healthy, smart children. But to execute that means you prevent other people from having children who you deem not fit. And that's what happened. In California, where I'm from, had the highest rates of sterilization among any of the other states. And so, they would sterilize people who were epileptic. They would sterilize people who were dyslexic because they didn't understand it. And so it devolved into something really quite awful. In fact, the worst de-evolvement of it was in Nazi Germany, when it was pretty much the same ideology. It was, we will decide whose life has value and whose doesn't. That's eugenics at its worst. And so it did pass, but it's part of our history. And I wanted to craft a story where it gets remembered, but I want to also have a story where I'm able to redeem at least one fictional person's story. So it's not a downer. It's going to be a satisfactory ending, but I hope to craft a happy ending for people who are impacted by that terrible movement.
Wow, Susan, we'll look forward to that. Thank you so much. Before you go, I want to tell you that Marilyn Dietz wanted everybody to know that she loved the last year of the war. She said it was so impactful and eye-opening to me, loved it. So thank you again for spending time with us. And I think Barnes & Noble is going to be full of people, clamoring, to get The Nature of Fragile Things. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So happy to be here with all of you.
And Robin, back to you.
Thank you. So what a wonderful interview, and the whole Enneagram piece. So fascinating about your character development. I actually, at my previous employer, they use the Enneagram to help us be better leaders. So that was astounding. Again, the book, The Nature of Fragile Things, it is available now. It is truly a great read. And I love this quoted on the cover, a brilliant story of resilience and the power of female friendship. So excellent interview. Thank you, Janet. Thank you so much, Susan. And now I'd like to turn it over to a woman that has had great resilience during this pandemic, our president, Tamara Averett. I know she's going to do just a short recap of yesterday, which was our celebration of our 60th anniversary. It was just a glorious day. So Tamara, take it over.
Thanks so much, Robin and Susan, Janet, just always a great conversation and so much appreciate your putting this on and the reading and all of those things. I'm excited to have my book group watch the video interview that we're doing on the WAHHI website that we're going to capture and post from today, and recommend this next book, The Nature of Fragile Things, for the book club that we'll read this next month. So I'm excited to kind of put those two pieces together, the book and then also the author interview that we've just done. So really great job. Thank you so much. Thanks for everybody that logged in today. I know there was a little challenge with the reminder link. So for those that contacted Nancy and myself, appreciate everybody's patience in working through the tech gremlins that sometimes get us, and appreciate you hanging in there to get in and enjoy today's presentation. I have just a couple little things that I wanted to share with folks. And the number one thing is thanks a ton. Thanks for coming out yesterday to our Zoom meeting with our 3 awesome speakers celebrating our 60th anniversary in our community. And thanks a ton for supporting our Second Helpings community food drive. We literally raised a ton of food through the food truck and the donations that's pictured here in the picture. We also raised about $2,500 of cold hard cash that Second Helpings will be able to use purchasing fresh fruit, food products to augment the canned and preserved items that were donated through the effort. So we couldn't have wanted a better result on what's known as February 17th as the Random Acts of Kindness Day. So thanks everybody for the giving heart that WAHHI ladies are known for. We have coming up our next environmental and cultural series event next Tuesday. It's going to be a great presentation with Kay Grinnell. She's an Audubon Society board member, very active in Southeast bird world, as well as Sarah Gustafson, who's a WAHHI member and has been on her pursuit of her, quote, big year, which is a big deal for birders. And you'll hear more about that, and some beautiful bird photography to boot. So it should be a really fun and good happy hour. We have registration open for these events coming in March. We have our environmental and cultural series continuing on March 9th and March 23rd. We're going to celebrate WAHHI women and women in the island that made a difference in Hilton Head on March 9th. And then we're going to hear more from Dr. Ahmad Ward, who's the executive director at Mitchellville, and he'll be speaking to us on March 23rd about yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and what's on the forefront with really Hilton Head's next wave of cultural tourism that's going to happen within that area. We also have our next author series with Patty Callahan Henry. She's going to be promoting Surviving Savannah. Again, you don't have to read the book, but that's going to be a great conversation with her as well. So we're excited for that opportunity with her. We have some other events coming in March with do not require registration, and these are all really benefits for the WAHHI Charitable Fund. So the first one is with Surge Takeout Kitchen. You can go to the WAHHI website, download your Surge Takeout Kitchen. You can copy it as many times as you want to copy. You do not need to cook dinner the entire month of March. Use your coupon, go to Surge Takeout Kitchen, and WAHHI's going to get 10% back of all orders that are presented with that coupon. And it's also good for friends and neighbors. Second one is celebrating Women's History Month. Women's History Month is all of March. We have One Hot Mamas partnering it with us in both Hilton Head and Bluffton locations, and they're going to be doing Eat In or To Go. You're going to sign the top of your receipt, and WAHHI's going to get 10% back on all of those proceeds coming back into our charitable fund. And then finally, we have our shop for the charitable fund with Aiden Lane and Philip Shoes on March 11th. Always something to find that's there. All of these different fundraising activities that we're doing is really to support our 60th charitable gift efforts that we're making happen, and as well as just in the future, the grant activities that we're going to be engaging with. We do have our WAHHI Spring Fling that's benefiting the 40th anniversary of our Youth Community Service Awards. Live music, beautiful venue on Skull Creek, time with your WAHHI friends and your spouses or significant other. Net proceeds are going to go to the Youth Award, and registration for this is open now with limited tickets due to social distancing requirements that are there. We did this in the fall with a benefit for the WAHHI Charitable Fund. It was a great night out for a Thursday night, March 25th, 5:30, Skull Creek Boathouse Landing. And this is an outdoor pavilion, open air, fireplace, beautiful venue, and we encourage you guys to come out. We have our Happy Spring membership meeting coming Thursday, April 8th. This is open for registration now. We're going to be having a luncheon catered by Downtown Deli. We have our athleisure style show, and we've got our 40th anniversary celebration of our youth awards. We're going to be hearing from some of our past award recipients coming back, talking about what community service means to them and their award, and then be celebrating 5 new recipients of our community service award. The picture here is the WAHHI style show from 1967. This has been one of the things our association has done. In 1967, we had furs, formals, and pantyhose. And so this year we're going to be doing athleisure to represent the resort wear that we generally live in. Whatever you choose to do, if it's walking, running, biking, hiking, paddling, golf, tennis, pickleball, you name your sport, we're going to have an outfit for you. And we're delighted to have WAHHI models make that happen as well. So a big program and a great day outside at Coastal Discovery Museum at the beautiful pavilion. Our athleisure style show partners are really across the board. Palmetto Dunes Oceanfront Resort is going to be delivering our golf, tennis, and pickleball fashions. And you can see the other folks that are participating here. So there's really something for everyone. We will be having a 60th anniversary raffle with tickets coming on sale pretty quickly. And the big gift of that raffle is going to be an e-bike donated by Hilton Head Bicycle. So that's a pretty big gift, about $1,100 of value to get an e-bike. And I have to tell you, I'm a big bicyclist, and I got an e-bike for Christmas. It's life-changing. I can go to Fresh Market now on my bike and bring home wine and beer with not a problem. Pretty good. We also, this is your time that we really want to encourage you to think about your upcoming community service and what you want to do, and make sure that you think about WAHHI and giving back to the Women's Association for your time. There's lots of different things that make our association run. We are 100% volunteer led and operated. So whatever your talent is, we can find a place if you want to give. And we are in search of folks that are wanting to give communications time and word processing, website work, social media work, whatever your thing is that you can do. We want to have you and get you plugged in to be able to do it. Always looking for event planners as well as neighborhood ambassadors to help make connections with our members as well, wherever they choose to live. We just really want to say thank you and appreciate Robin, Janet, and our special guest, best-selling author Susan today for their time, as well as all of you for turning out today and all of the time that we have together. So thanks so much, and back over to Robin.
Thank you so much, Tamara. When I think about all the organizations, events that have been canceled, postponed because of the pandemic, and you look at what WAHHI has done this year, it is absolutely unbelievable and amazing how we've re-engineered, how we've been innovative, how your leadership and the entire leadership team and all of our women have come together to reconnect, stay connected during this tough time. One of those events, of course, is our author series that has been going on for 9 months, and we've been on Zoom. We'll continue on Zoom until we can meet in person. We want to thank Susan Meissner once again, The Nature of Fragile Things. I just finished it this afternoon. You've got to go either on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. If it's not there, it'll be ordered, but it's a fabulous book about resiliency. And yes, Betty, our president for next year, that's going to be our theme. We as women are strong. We are resilient. We've been resilient during this pandemic and will continue to be. And that's a wrap, ladies. It's been a great author session again with our best-selling author, Susan Meissner. We appreciate all of you being with us and participating. And we'll see you next month on the same, actually March the 18th at 5 o'clock for our author, Patty Callahan Henry, for her book that she'll be talking about, Surviving Savannah. So have a great weekend, everyone. I think we're going to have some yucky weather tonight, but it doesn't matter. March is coming. Thank you, ladies, and we'll see you next month. Bye-bye.